So it would be appreciated if your questions are around our law enforcement response to what we're seeing here with federal agents and immigration enforcement and how we respond. I've been quiet a little too long because I want to stay out of the politics of this, because as you know, there's a lot of politics around this. I don't play politics. I've told you that before. I'm the head of a department that enforces the law. We have to be politically neutral if we are going to enforce the law the way that it's supposed to be enforced, impartially. We want to make sure that when we show up, we're keeping every single person in this city safe, and we want to keep the peace. That's our jobs. And that's what our men and women out there every single day are doing, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. So I just want to be clear about a few things. The events that occurred on Saturday when there was a shooting involving ICE agents. So I'm going to start with a timeline. It started out with our two deputy chiefs who responded to the scene. That would be Deputy Chief Brian Kinane and Deputy Chief Gabriella Shemash. They did an excellent job over there. The narrative is out there that CPD was not on scene. CPD did not show up. Let me just put all of that to rest. At 10:32 a.m., CPD receives a call of a person shot at 39th and Kedzie. By 10:36 a.m., CPD responds. They located a woman who flagged them down. She had been shot. She stated that she had been shot by federal agents. CFD was called. She was taken to the hospital to have her gunshot wounds treated. At 11:06, CPD officers are at the hospital with this individual who had been shot. At 11:25 a.m., CPD units are holding down the scene where the offending vehicle was located. And when I say the offending vehicle, we're talking about the vehicle that smashed into the Border Patrol vehicle. At 11:36 a.m., the scene is then turned over to federal authorities for their investigation after CPD was clear that there was a shooting that involved this particular person who was at the hospital. At 12:12 p.m., in a separate incident, and I believe people have been conflating these two things. In a separate incident from the shooting, there was a vehicle that rammed the federal agents off the road, ran them off the road at 3200 West 35th Street. They crashed as a result of it. That offending vehicle also struck another vehicle in that location, another federal vehicle in that location, and then fled the scene. Our officers arrived on the scene to do the reports and document everything that happened. We have no documented injuries from that incident. At 12:28 p.m., federal agents called for CPD to assist due to a large crowd gathering at 39th and Kedzie. At 1:09 p.m., additional CPD units are en route to 39th and Kedzie. At 1:15 at 39th and Kedzie, where CPD is on scene, a group of protesters began moving barricades and federal agents deployed tear gas. At 2:56 p.m., objects are being thrown at CPD by members of the public. Federal agents again deployed gas to leave the area. So let me just kind of break down what happened there, because at 3:48, everything was all clear. When our officers arrived on scene, they met with the federal agents who were out there. The federal agents had deployed chemical agents. They deployed chemical agents while our officers were there. Those who will tell you that our officers weren't there, say that to the 27 officers who were affected by the chemical agents that were deployed by federal agents. There were 27 reports done to document our officers who were affected by that gas. I've since had a conversation with federal agents, and on that particular day, I spoke with the leadership of the federal agency. We talked about things as to how we were going to work this out. You see, communication is the key here. Communication does not mean collaboration. This had nothing to do with immigration enforcement. What it had to do with a scene where someone in our city was shot, and we, as CPD, are responsible for showing up, documenting that, even when the shooting and the investigation has been taken over by the FBI. We stayed out there for the crime scene to make sure that evidence was preserved, because if that evidence isn't preserved, a proper and a well-performed investigation cannot be done if we don't preserve the crime scene. If we allow people to breach that area and contaminate the crime scene, it hurts the investigation. We have a duty to do so. So I need to be clear about a few things. When a crime is being committed, CPD is going to show up. And it doesn't matter if there are ICE agents there, we have a duty to investigate and protect our city. Now, there are a lot of talking heads out there. There are a lot of politics being used here. And people are using this for their political talking points. Well, my officers are not political pawns. My leadership team, not political pawns. Their lives are too important to play politics with these men and women who face danger every single day. This is not a game. This is not a joke. This is still our city. And we still have a responsibility to maintain safety and calm in our city. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to address. One, what we have to deal with as a department. Because I want to be clear to those who have never done the job, who haven't done the job in years, who weren't on scene, who don't know the facts or have the facts. But they've got a lot of solutions or a lot of ideas of what happened or what should have happened. Let me first talk about the Trust Act. The Trust Act prohibits law enforcement in the state of Illinois from engaging in assisting federal agents when it comes to immigration enforcement. We abide by that law. The city ordinance, the Welcoming City Ordinance, goes a little further. It even prohibits us from asking someone their status. We abide by that ordinance because in law enforcement, we don't make the laws, we uphold them. And we're sworn to do so. And we take our oath seriously. Engaging with federal agents, we do it on a regular basis. We have task force officers who are out there every single day working to stop human trafficking, drug enforcement, gun violence, gun recoveries, search warrants, and everything in between when it comes to violent crime in our city. We have a great partnership with our federal agents, and we still do, and we will continue to work with them around violent crime. But Let me explain how important it is to understand how difficult it is for our officers at times. Because when we look at the Trust Act and the Welcoming City Ordinance, sometimes there's a struggle when you're walking that line to make sure that you're not violating either one of those things, and at the same time enforcing the law the way that we're supposed to. One thing about law enforcement, I'll tell you this right now, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But we accept that. So I'm not going to stand here and make excuses or pretend like the job is not a struggle, so we're going to make excuses about it. No, we're not going to do that. Again, these men and women go out there every single day, and these are the things that they fight through. And my leadership team wants to make sure that our officers don't get caught up in something where they end up in an investigation, fairly or unfairly, and they want to make sure that these officers are safe and that they can keep everyone else safe. So although we do not engage in immigration enforcement, we are going to enforce the law when the laws are violated. So let me be clear to the public about certain things. You have to excuse me, I'm a little dehydrated. Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement. It is a crime. You may not like what they're doing. I can understand that there's a lot of emotions out there, but that does not mean that you get to commit a crime, especially one that could lead to deadly force. We need to keep everyone safe. Our responsibilities when it comes to federal agents, and I've been asked these questions, we do not interfere with the duties and responsibilities of federal agents. We don't have to agree with it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to agree with it. We do not interfere with their orders. And when they go out to carry out their orders, they will do that the way that they're trained to do it and their understanding of what it is they have to do. Another one, CPD will not arrest and cannot arrest federal agents because someone deems what they're doing is illegal or unlawful. Their rules of engagement are different from CPD and other local law enforcement agents. We need to be clear about this. If we're not clear about this, we will see another event like we saw Saturday. We cannot move like this in this city. If we want to keep the peace in this city, we need to be smart about how we do things. And attacking law enforcement under any circumstances is not safe for anyone. Because as I've said before, a member of law enforcement who cannot protect himself or herself cannot protect anyone else. And we have a responsibility to make sure that we protect ourselves and each other so that we can protect everyone else in this city. If for any reason a crime is being committed, an ICE agent, state, local, police officers, if it involves law enforcement, we are going to show up. And whatever's going on there, we're going to work to stop it, put an end to it, calm the situation down. And if we need to stay there to continue to keep the situation calm, we will do exactly that. So I want to be clear about one of the things that we're going to do now. What we're going to do, and this is my decision because I need to be firm on this. When we show up to a scene and a crowd gathers, CPD is going to step out there. We're going to make sure that we maintain that scene and we keep people calm. This is our city, and we're going to make sure that we bring some type of calm or resolution to whatever's going on at that scene. We will be there. Now, when we look at what has happened, there are some things that we can work on. Because whenever you see something for the first time and you respond to it, there's always something that you can do better. That's what we do. And that's why we're having an after action about what happened so that we can prepare if something like this happens again, or to prepare to make sure that we can avoid it. So we learned some things. Now, I'm going to allow some questions from everyone here. I'll do my best to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Again, I would like for everyone to stay on topic as to what we're talking about here right now. And when it's over, there are some things that I'm probably going to touch on if we don't get to them with the questions. So go ahead.
Okay, we'll start here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Madison with Black Club Chicago. Superintendent, when you said there were 27 agents affected by the chemical agents used, can you expand on that? What do you mean by these officers were affected?
Well, thanks for that question, Madison. Our officers were out there. There were chemical agents dropped. Our officers were pulled from other locations to go over there. On Saturday, we had multiple events going on, including a large protest in the downtown area. So in order to help out at this location, we pulled officers from other places. They did not have the equipment to fight off a chemical agent, and they were affected by it. Were there any major injuries? No. Our officers are resilient and tough, and they were actually pretty tough on the scene. And but we made sure that it was documented, just in case they had some after effects from it. We just want to make sure that our officers are safe. So those officers are doing good, and then thank you for the question, for asking.
Sarah Schulte with ABC7.
Hi,
good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, a supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation. I'm not sure until we get to our after action, all of the exact language that was there, but I have had a conversation with the Chief of Patrol who was concerned about officers showing up on the scene. The Chief of Patrol at that time had no information that anyone was in danger. And let me just be clear about one other thing when it comes to these federal agents. These federal agents can handle themselves, all right? We've been out there and we've seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to leave them because we know that they can handle themselves. We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if something, if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down, because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us. And it's the same thing that we do on our side. When someone is in trouble, we're going to step in. So to get a little more information about that, we'll know by tomorrow what that exact conversation was.
Superintendent, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. JC Navarrete, NBC Chicago.
Hey,
Going
Jay.
off the point here, damned if you do, damned if you don't, as you mentioned. How do you toe that line between showing up and providing backup for a fellow officer who may be in need, but not helping them and execute their orders that are, of course, from a federal level? How do you toe that line between both of those?
You know, doing the right thing, showing up on the scene, doing the right thing, preparing for the backlash, the rumors, the things that people write and say, the things that people accuse you of. Officers deal with this on a regular basis. And this is why wellness for officers is so important, because this is the type of thing that an officer has to go home and kind of decompress from, right? You show up to a job, you know you're there to make sure that people are safe. And if there are immigration officers there, they're now being accused of enforcing immigration. They now become the subject of an investigation. They don't know how that investigation is going to unfold. But on my end, it's my responsibility to explain these situations. It's my responsibility to take that off of the backs of my officers, that when they go there and do the right thing, that they can be certain that their superintendent is going to stand up for them for doing what they're supposed to do and doing the job the right way, and that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Hi, Superintendent Saramaki, CBS.
Hi, sir.
This is, I guess, part clarification, part question. I think you mentioned you met the day before on how we're going to work this out. Was that a meeting on Friday with federal partners?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you understood what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't think I did. So I just wanted to
Okay, you
clarify.
said we met
Have
the
you
day before.
met, I think you mentioned you met the day before to talk about how we were going to work this out. Have you-
No. So I actually have contact with federal agents. And the reason that I talk to them is because when we have a situation that's volatile, that could blow up, that could turn into a full-blown riot, we have to have this communication. Because if we're going to keep the peace and we're going to keep this city as safe as we can possibly keep it, we need to have that communication. The rules of engagement for federal agents and the rules of engagement for CPD are completely different. There are things that these agents do that we don't do here in the city. So we need to make sure that we have an understanding of how we're going to go about keeping the peace at a scene when a crime has been committed, how we're going to stop violence if that's going to happen. And I had what was a very fruitful conversation that stopped Saturday from ending in a riot-like situation. And we're going to continue to do that.
Can you elaborate on what those strategies were then that prevented maybe things? getting worse?
I won't go into too much with that, but what I will say is this. Having a conversation about our officers going in, taking over the front line, making sure that we're standing out in front of these protesters so that they can then move to the inner perimeter and do what they needed to do to maintain that crime scene. Get that crime scene taken care of as soon as possible, get them out of there as soon as possible. That brings down the boiling point. So if we're working to make sure that we're keeping the peace, this has nothing to do with immigration. It has to do with keeping the peace in our city and keeping calm.
Hi, Superintendent Sophie with the Sun-Times.
Hi,
I don't know
Sophie.
if you could talk a little bit more about, we're going to be involved in scenes like this now. Will it look different from how it looked Saturday? Did this federal leadership you spoke with have anything to say about those 27 agents who were, affected by chemical gas?
Oh, absolutely. He was extremely concerned about it. We are going to have further conversations about it. He was also appreciative of the fact that we came in, stepped in, and he was the first to say that this could have turned into a full-blown riot, and it didn't. So CPD, again, just can never say enough about how proud I am of those officers going in, being converged on like that, stepping in, and making sure that they kept the peace there.
Brandon with WBBM News Radio.
Hey,
I think during the DNC, you kind of showed and ushered in what looked like a new era of crowd control and how that might look like successful crowd control. Are you going to be utilizing any of those techniques that were learned and trained for during the DNC? And the second part of this is when you're doing crowd control around these federal agents. Will federal agents then be allowed to join in, and would the techniques like we see in Broadview that are being used, or other gas being dispersed throughout the city, are those going to be included into your crowd control techniques?
No, because that and let me just go back to your first question, and it's a great one, and thank you for that. Our officers are trained, and we continue that training just in case we have other civil unrest or protests that are going on, First Amendment activity. And our officers are very well trained, as you said. They'll show up on the scene and they'll utilize that training. Depending on the size of the crowd, things of that nature, tactics and techniques could change based on that. However, when they show up, all of the techniques, tactics that they've learned, that's what we'll be utilizing in these situations to diffuse situations and to keep things calm. When it comes to deployments of chemical agents and things of that nature, again, the federal law enforcement, they have a different probably training around it. They have different rules of engagement. So when they deploy based on their tactics and what their rules are. When we take control of a scene, we will have direct contact communication with them so that they understand that we're going to cover that front line, so that it will be unnecessary to use these chemical agents at this time, because we'll be in front, we'll make sure that we keep these things covered.
Omar Jimenez, CNN. Good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
So in the timeline that you put out, you said 1228 federal agents call for help for a crowd. 109 additional CPD units are en route. I know there were already officers on scene, but can you just give some clarity on what were the considerations, or what would the considerations have been between in the 31 minutes or so, or 41 minutes, quick math, or so, when additional units were still being considered to be sent to the scene? What was the decision making around there, and why was that needed?
Well, the decision making was based on a request. There was a crime scene there that had to be processed by the FBI, who was doing the investigation, and you still had a crowd there, not a very large crowd, but within that crowd there were some unruly people. There were federal agents there, and they held their line, but we wanted to make sure that we got there because there had been some chemical agents that were deployed. We wanted to get there to make sure that we brought the temperature down, allowed for the processing of the crime scene, Once it was processed, then everybody could leave. But that gap of time that you're talking about, it took a little time to move officers from one location to another to get those officers over there. So we pulled officers from other deployments to get over there to help out with what was going on at that location.
Hi, Superintendent Snelling. Tonya Hill with the Tribe.
Tony, how are you?
Tonya, but thank you.
Tony, yeah, okay. I didn't get that right.
No problem. I wanted to ask, in your comments earlier, you said CPD cannot and will not arrest federal agents, but today the mayor signed an executive order establishing ICE-free zones. So my question for you is, how will the police department, be responsible for enforcing this executive order?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. I've only gotten a chance today to browse over that executive order because it was recently released. That's something that I'm going to have to look at DOL, the Department of Law, sit down and talk about what's in that executive order. So I don't really want to speak on anything that I haven't studied and have a true understanding of. But again, I will go back and say what I said before. We do not arrest federal agents who are here to do their jobs.
Emmy Victor with WGN. Good to see you.
How are you? Good to see you again.
You too. Actually, on that note about the inability of arresting federal agents, I know you all are still responsible for documentation. So I guess my question is, how closely are these situations being documented in terms of the actions of protesters as well as the actions from federal agents? Because as we know, there have already been lawsuits popping up in Broadview, for example, because of the situations, people being pushed to the ground, potential excessive force that people are claiming they've received in that area. So, you know, if there are court cases that stem from this, how closely are you documenting both sides of the situation?
Well, here's what we don't document things on that level. If we make an arrest, if we put hands on someone, if we use force as an agency ourselves, we follow our policies. And this goes back to me saying that the rules of engagement for federal agents going to be different from that of local law enforcement, especially at CPD. A lot of what we do and the way that we respond, our policies are more restrictive than federal and state laws. So when you are looking at what a federal agent is doing, you might be judging that federal agent based on our policies, and you can't do that. Those things have to be separated. So when a federal agent takes someone into custody, the way that they use force, that's going to be for the federal agency to explain, not CPD. So what we worry about and what I worry about are my officers policing constitutionally and keeping each other safe, keeping the city safe, and keeping everyone safe around them, and stopping those who will commit violent acts against anyone. That's what I'm concerned about. So we don't document what they do. That's up to them.
Good afternoon, Superintendent. Caroline
Hello.
with the Chicago Tribune. Nice
Caroline?
to meet you. Yes.
Good to meet you, Caroline.
So the feds called for help at 12:28 p.m. There's a computer message timestamped at 12:28 p.m. that says no units will respond. Dispatchers later captured on audio saying that she's waving off units from 39th and Kedzie. I am wondering what would you call that, if not a stand down, and if there were already enough units on scene, how many were there circa 12:28, 12:30 p.m.?
That's something else that we have to look at, and we have to see because sometimes what you hear on the radio does not necessarily reflect what's happening on the ground once someone's there, but we did have officers over there. We have a timeline and a breakdown of who responded. And if you listen to the radio transmission, there were multiple officers who said they were going to that location. And they showed up because that's what CPD does when they hear that someone's in danger. Now, one of the things that I will say when it comes to that location was separate from the shooting. That was where vehicles were rammed. I believe it was along 31st Street. I believe 3100 West 35th Street. We're still looking into that. This is something that was said over the air. And when I say we're still looking into it, this is part of our after action. I want to be clear about one thing, though, and this will also be a part of the after action. When there is an immediate need for CPD to respond, I don't want anyone, especially when someone's life may be in danger, I don't want anyone to have to call anybody in leadership. I want them to respond, and I want them to respond immediately, because it doesn't matter what an order is. If you know as a law enforcement agent that another law enforcement agent is in trouble, or anyone else, and you need to stop violence against that person, I want them responding, and I want them to respond. Now, you can always explain why you may have disobeyed an order, if that was in order. But I can tell you right now, there is no internal memo that says that. Now, there may have been an understanding of that, but we want to make sure that our officers are responding on the scene. And this is something that we're going to be talking to our officers about. This is something we're going to be talking to our leadership, so that that message trickles down. If there are exigent circumstances, work now and then talk about your response later, because you will respond based on the totality of circumstances that you see at the scene right then and there. And if there are split-second decisions that need to be made, we can always explain those actions for those officers.
Final question. Afternoon, Superintendent. My name is Peter Nikias. I'm a reporter with Illinois Answers.
How are you, Peter?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm curious if at any point during the afternoon you or anyone in your command staff had a conversation with whoever was in command for the different federal agencies and just said, hey, you don't need to use gas because we know how to do crowd control. A lot of the 9th District, 8th District regulars were there. We saw residents calling them out because they knew them from previous interactions. Did you or anyone in your command staff at any point say, like, hey, it doesn't need to go down like this?
Well, this is why I said that I am right now having conversations with federal leadership when it comes to ICE or immigration, so that we can work that part of it out. And this is why I'm saying now that at CPD, we're going to show up. Yeah. If we're there and we're in control of the crowd and we're handling that, there's no need for the federal agents to be confronted by these protesters or have the protesters confront them.
Yes,
so
just a point of clarification. I'm glad you brought that up. So I understand absolutely when somebody calls for help, you go. That's like the first thing they tell you in police academy, right? Like, you call for help, please show up. So one of the things that we heard from residents on Saturday was that they were pleading with the police for help because the use of gas felt disproportionate to what was being offered from protesters. And I understand that there's limited ability to intervene, but I'm just curious, like, why not have that conversation that day of like, hey, here, like, we're taking control of the scene.
So here's the deal. As I told you before, our officers were deployed all over the city. So to get enough people there so that everyone felt safe, it took time to do that. Now, again, we can have that conversation on the scene, but if that's not how they're trained, that's probably not going to take much effect. That's why communication afterwards has to happen. And I've already reached out to the leadership and expressed concern about that and what we're going to do moving forward, and that's why the communication has to happen. The difficulty here has always been around the belief that CPD is working with immigration enforcement, which we're not. And there's always been that difficulty. But right now, I'm standing here to tell you this. I don't really care about what people think about that anymore, because I know what we're doing. And I'll just explain that so that we can avoid these types of situations happening in the future. Now, I get what you're saying. That's always, when we're looking at a situation like that, we're looking at it in hindsight, right? And things were kind of all over the place. We now know this was the first time something like this happened involving immigration, where someone rammed a federal agent and a shooting occurred as a result of it. Box federal agents in, and a shooting occurred. This was the first time this happened. This is why we're doing an after action, so that we can better respond to this the next time something like this happens. So I get you. So hold on. No, hold on. Listen, I just need to address another thing, and this is very important. There's a lot of heat out there around the chief of patrol. And I'm going to make this clear. The chief of patrol would never tell someone to stand down when any fellow law enforcement agent is in trouble or in need of help. Now, I will say there was a lot of miscommunication, talking points back and forth about what was really happening out there on the ground, and we need to do better. And if we screw something up, we mess up, we fess up, we fix it. But what I will tell you is this. I'm going to tell you about a man with 30 years on this job who has been out there and handled over 400 protests as the chief of patrol. A man who stands on the front line with all of his officers. And I know this for a fact because I stand out there with him. The weekend of Mexican independence, he was out there every single day, worked 18 hours every day, out there with his troops. The DNC, the No Kings March, every protest involving the Palestinians, protests over Gaza, protests over immigration. The man is out there. He has worked on the south side, the west side, downtown. The man loves this job, and he loves his officers. And I'm telling you this from the perspective of someone who sits and talks with this man every day. He rarely goes home. He wants to make sure that each and every one of these officers goes home safely. He has the respect of the protests and the protesters and the people who lead these protest groups. He has a relationship with them. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to deal with people. And the fact that someone could post one thing without any background, with any context, without any information, put lies out there about this man and what he has given to this city, what he has given to this department. I'm just going to stand here and tell you right now, if I were to turn my back on this man because of political BS, and yes, political BS, and people's political beliefs, I would be a coward. That's not going to happen. That's my partner in crime. I will go to war with this man. I'm not going to allow anybody to rake this man over the coals. The DNC could not have been a success without him. Couldn't have been without him. So, you can't be pro-police when you need something, and then anti when it's politically advantageous. You either believe that the job of policing is a tough job or you don't. You either believe in law and order or you don't. We're going to judge a person based on a post. This man has served this city with honor. And I'm going to stand with him till the end. This man's brother was a federal agent who is now deceased. He talks about it. He talks about where he came from. Small town, poor man. We have similar stories. Never thought he'd be the chief of patrol and thankful for it every single day. When I talked to him, he was concerned that our officers who would go there would be exposed to chemical agents without their masks. He wanted to make sure that these officers were well prepared if they got there. He wanted to protect his officers. But when we got the information, which I got directly from the head of Border Patrol, that the agents had been involved in the shooting, they had been boxed in, we talked. He immediately redeployed resources to the location to get more people there. See, when you don't know the whole story, it's easy to go online and listen to those who are trolling. I don't really care about that because I know the facts. So I've always said this, and I tell this to my officers. There are two things that you can look at. You can look at your reputation, and you can look at your character. People can determine your reputation. All they have to do is go to social media and tell a lie. Put something up there, post it. But what they can never take away is your character. Because I know the man's character, he knows his character. His family knows his character. Reputation, I never worry about someone's reputation until I have a conversation with them and I get to know their character. People will say your reputation precedes you. It does until you get to know a man or a woman's character. And I'm telling you right now, in law enforcement, with everything that all of us in law enforcement have been through over the years, we cannot turn our backs on each other because of what was posted online. When we do things like that, we're failing each other. How can we talk about anyone else who doesn't support us as police officers if we're not supporting each other? We have to do better. And I'm telling you, Chief Hine is a man of character. And I'm standing here saying this to you, and I don't really care what anybody has to say about it, and I'm going to stand with him. He is my chief of patrol. We will protect this city. We are going to protect all of our law enforcement agents when we're out there. But most of all, we serve the residents of this city. And we are going to protect you. That's what we're here for. That's what he's concerned about, which is why I chose him as chief of patrol. He cares about this city, and he cares about the residents of this city. He cares about law enforcement. And we're going to make sure that we protect everybody in this city and keep calm in this city. This is our city. And the Chicago Police Department is one hell of a department with some amazing people out there working, putting their lives on the line to keep this city safe. And we're going to continue to do so. We're going to show up when absolutely necessary. So I thank you for coming, but look for us out there to do exactly what I said we're going to do, because we've got the best people to get that job done. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Super quick, are you okay with